Today, we've got Destiny, the internet's favorite keyboard warrior, watching Ben Shapiro. Yes, the fast-talking, fact-slinging Harvard law grad turned conservative darling, dismantle Trump's big, shiny tariff plan.
To eliminate the obstacles between trade between our states and to find new markets throughout the world, to have better economy, more solid, more robust. The last years, I discussed with leaders all over the world. My message hasn't changed. Canada is a reliable partner, and our doors are open. During the last week, we made more efforts to...
I don't think it's that complicated. Trump hilariously thinks we're getting ripped off due to the trade deficit, which he calls subsidizing. I still haven't heard anyone explain the unbelievably simple and obvious reason for why we have a trade deficit with our neighbor when we are 9 times larger than in population, 5 times larger than our GDP. In what world should our imports and exports match? I mean, like, it's just not even a good way to measure the success of a country. There's this guy, I think he graduated Harvard Law, who does a really good analysis on how stupid it is to measure imports and exports as like the success of your country. Where is his video from?
There is no correlation between trade deficit with a particular country and that country doing better than we are. That's just not the way any of this works. But the Trump administration is not doing this for economic reasons. They're doing it for cultural reasons. So here, let me explain why they're doing this for cultural reasons. Again, there's a picture. Okay, politics is about pictures. Politics is about stories. Politics is about narratives. When I say trade deficit doesn't matter, it's true, but Trump is telling a different story. And the story that President Trump is telling is a story that goes something like this. Once upon a time, there were booming industries in the United States, large-scale factories, these big buildings located in Detroit, where people worked on employment lines, where they worked on manufacturing lines, and they worked there for 50 years, and they got the gold rush, and then they went home. And they had enough money based on that one salary to support their families. Why can't we go back to something like that? And the answer is because America's economy is much more developed. You have better stuff now. You have cheaper stuff now. The businesses that we work in are better to work in than those businesses. If you had a choice between working in a Pittsburgh smelter and working in the Pittsburgh healthcare industry, you would choose to work in the Pittsburgh healthcare industry. Pittsburgh, by the way, is doing quite well. Right? The Pittsburgh unemployment statistic right now, the Pittsburgh unemployment rate currently is 4.6% as of September 2017. Okay, that is lower than Pennsylvania as a whole. It's lower than Philadelphia at 6.0%. That's because Pittsburgh has totally shifted how it works. Pittsburgh has become one of the more beautiful cities in the union. Pittsburgh is clean now. It is a service industry. It is a healthcare industry driven city. But Trump doesn't like that. He wants to go back to the pictures from The Deer Hunter, where you've got Christopher Walken working in giant gloves. Right? He wants to go back to the pictures from Breaking Away, where you've got the father working in a quarry. Right? That's what Trump thinks industry looks like. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Iran, by the way, has a trade surplus. Right? Iran is number 15 in the world in trade surplus. Iran. Is their economy something that you like? Is that something that you think makes any sense? Here are the countries with the largest trade deficits, by contrast. The three largest trade deficits in the world: United States, UK, Canada. Do those economies sound pretty good to you? Because they are pretty good. Right? India is a growing economy. They have a trade deficit. France has a pretty significant trade deficit. Australia has a significant trade deficit. Again, no correlation between having a trade deficit and having a poor economy. But again,
I don't know if he brings this up, maybe not. But you know, it's a huge trade surplus right now and has had a huge trade surplus is China, who are running into a bunch of problems, their housing market and other economic difficulties domestically as well. Just because you have a surplus or a deficit doesn't speak to the strength of your economy.
It's not about that. It's about Trump thinking he's going to win politically because he promised a bunch of people in manufacturing industries he's going to bring their jobs back. I said at the time that's a lie. Those jobs aren't coming back. Those jobs left because of technology. They did not leave because of global competition. And they certainly are not going to be protected by killing jobs in other industries. Because all a surplus is, all a tariff is a tax that is being placed on everyone else for the benefit of some.
Yep.
So if you think that, for example, the ethanol industry needs to be subsidized by the federal government, I don't think so. I think that it's nasty to tax me to pay off a bunch of farmers in Iowa. Like, I don't see why that's useful.
We need people like this in the Republican Party to hold the Republican Party together. Like, we need tension between the left and the right in this country to keep everybody in like some reasonable world. And then we need tension within the parties. We need the progressives that want trans 4-year-olds, and we need the blue dog Democrats that don't even believe in gay marriage to keep the Democratic Party like on track with what people want. We need in the Conservative Party, you know, some of these crazy populist MAGA people, and we need like the neocon big business guys as well. Like the different conversations that happen, and then the tension, and then the equilibrium that results from all of this argument, the marketplace of ideas or whatever, is essential to maintaining some semblance of reality. But we've lost all of it, at least on the right. I would argue on the left, there is still some semblance. Again, when Biden and Kamala came into office in 2021, they had to denounce the crazy BLM riots. They had to denounce some of the crazier policies from the progressives. You know, we've seen the Olympic, or maybe not the Olympic Committee, but I think NCAA, before Trump issued any executive orders, step back from some of the trans stuff. Like, liberals are correcting still, even if we argue that some of the progressives are kind of wacky, but whoops. But the MAGA movement has just become such a echo chamber, and they're incapable of self-correction because you have to be on board with everything that Daddy Trump says, and there's no room for disagreement or debate, and it's so unhealthy.
Increase our collaboration with Mexico. That is also a victim of these tariffs.
Now, Trump's tariff idea is basically his economic equivalent of a toddler scribbling on the walls with a crayon labeled America First. It's bold, it's messy, and it's not entirely clear what the endgame is. The plan: slap tariffs on imports to eliminate the competition between states, find new markets, and make the economy more solid. Sounds simple, right? Like a late-night infomercial promising you six-pack abs if you just buy this one weird kitchen gadget. But as Shapiro and Destiny point out, it's not just simplistic. It's a full-on fever dream that ignores how economies actually work. Let's start with the trade deficit, because oh boy, does Trump love to wave that number around like it's a report card proving America's getting bullied on the global playground. The trade deficit, for those of you who don't spend your evenings doom-scrolling economic data, is the difference between what a country imports and what it exports. If you import more than you export, you've got a deficit. Trump sees this number and thinks, we're subsidizing other countries. They're laughing at us. Canada's probably sipping maple syrup and chuckling. But here's the thing, and Destiny's reaction to Shapiro's takedown nails this: there's no correlation between a trade deficit and a failing economy. None. Zero. Nada. It's like saying your coffee addiction is why your car won't start. The two are just not related. Shapiro, in his trademark rapid-fire style, points out that the U.S. has a trade deficit because it's a massive economy, 9 times larger than Canada's in population, with a GDP that's basically the economic equivalent of a bodybuilder flexing at a yoga retreat. We buy a lot because we can. We're not getting ripped off. We're just shopping like we're at an all-you-can-eat buffet. And the countries with the biggest trade deficits? The US, the UK, Canada, economies that are frankly doing pretty well. Meanwhile, countries with trade surpluses like Iran aren't exactly popping champagne and celebrating their economic dominance. Iran's got a trade surplus and a housing market that's collapsing faster than a bad sitcom. So maybe, just maybe, the trade deficit isn't the boogeyman Trump thinks it is. But here's where it gets juicy, and where Destiny's reaction to Shapiro's analysis really shines a light on the deeper issue. Trump's not pushing tariffs for economic reasons. Oh no. This isn't about GDP growth or job creation or any of those boring things you'd find in an economics textbook. This is about culture. This is about pictures. This is about stories. Trump's spinning a yarn straight out of a sepia-toned postcard, and it goes something like this. Once upon a time, in a magical land called 1950s America, there were big, beautiful factories in Detroit. Men in overalls worked on assembly lines, earned a solid wage, got a gold watch after 50 years, and supported their families on a single income. Life was good. The skies were blue. The cars were chrome. And then, done. Globalization swooped in like a villain in a bad Western, stealing those jobs and leaving America a husk of its former glory. It's a compelling story. It's got heart, it's got nostalgia, it's got Christopher Walken in The Deer Hunter wearing giant gloves and sweating in a Pittsburgh smelter. But here's the problem: it's not true, not even close. As Shapiro points out, America's economy has evolved. We don't need to go back to smelters and quarries because we've got better stuff now. Cheaper stuff. Jobs in healthcare, tech, services, industries that are, frankly, a lot nicer to work in than a factory where you're breathing in coal dust and praying you don't lose a finger. Pittsburgh, for example, isn't the grimy industrial wasteland Trump's imagining. It's a clean, vibrant city with a 4.6% unemployment rate, lower than Pennsylvania as a whole. It's a hub for healthcare and services, not smoky factories. But Trump doesn't want that story. He wants the picture of a burly guy in a hard hat, not a nurse in scrubs or a coder in a hoodie. And this is where Destiny's reaction gets to the heart of the matter. Trump's tariffs aren't about fixing the economy. They're about winning politically. They're about promising people in Rust Belt towns that he'll bring back the good old days, when men were men, factories were factories, and America didn't have to deal with pesky things like global supply chains or technological progress. It's a promise that sounds great on a campaign trail, but falls apart faster than a cheap IKEA bookshelf when you actually think about it. Because those manufacturing jobs, they didn't disappear because of China or Mexico or Canada's maple-flavored treachery. They left because of technology, automation, robots, machines that can do the work faster, cheaper, and without needing a lunch break. Tariffs won't bring those jobs back. They'll just make everything more expensive for everyone else. Let's talk about tariffs for a second, because this is where Trump's plan goes from misguided to outright bananas. A tariff is essentially a tax on imported goods. Sounds simple, right? You slap a tax on Chinese sneakers, and suddenly American sneaker factories are back in business. Except no. What actually happens is that everything gets more expensive. You're not just taxing Chinese sneakers, you're taxing American consumers who now have to pay more for their Nikes. And the industries you're trying to protect, they're not coming back because the problem isn't foreign competition, it's that machines are better at making sneakers than people are. Meanwhile, other industries, like say the ones that rely on cheap imported materials, get screwed. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by flooding the entire house. Sure, you might distract people from the drip, but now everyone's swimming in regret. Shapiro's point, which Destiny gleefully amplifies, is that tariffs are a tax on everyone to benefit a tiny sliver of the population. It's like saying, hey, let's all chip in to subsidize the ethanol industry. And then everyone in the room goes, why are we paying extra for corn juice when we could just not? It's not about fairness or economic sense. It's about pandering to a specific group of voters who have been sold a fairy tale about the past. And the kicker, even if you do manage to prop up one industry, you're killing jobs in others. It's a zero-sum game where the only winner is the guy on the campaign trail waving a flag and promising miracles. Now let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the bigger picture, because this is where Destiny's reaction to Shapiro's analysis gets really spicy. The problem with Trump's tariff obsession isn't just that it's bad economics, it's that it's part of a broader, more troubling trend in the MAGA movement. Destiny points out something crucial here. The Republican Party, and particularly the MAGA wing, has become an echo chamber where dissent is verboten. You can't question the dear leader. You can't say, hey, maybe tariffs aren't the answer. You can't even whisper, Donald, the economy's more complicated than a bumper sticker. If you do, you're excommunicated faster than a vegan at a barbecue. This is a problem, folks, a big one, because a healthy political party, heck, a healthy anything needs tension. It needs debate. It needs people pulling in different directions so you don't end up with a one-way ticket to Crazy Town. The Democratic Party, for all its flaws, and trust me, we'll get to those, still has some of that tension. You've got the progressive wing pushing for things like universal health care and trans rights, and you've got the moderates, your blue dog Democrats, who are like, whoa, maybe let's not scare the suburbs. That friction, as messy as it is, keeps the party grounded. When Biden and Kamala took office in 2021, they had to push back against some of the wilder ideas from the progressive left, like the more out-there BLM demands or the idea that every college campus needs a safe space with free puppies and coloring books. They had to course-correct, because that's what functioning parties do. But the MAGA crowd, they've thrown that out the window. It's Trump's way or the highway, and if you dare suggest that his tariff plan is less genius and more guys shouting at clouds, you're out. This isn't a political movement anymore. It's a cult of personality where the only acceptable opinion is Trump is right. And that's dangerous. Not just because it leads to bad policies like tariffs, but because it kills any chance of self-correction. When you can't question the leader, you can't fix mistakes. And when you can't fix mistakes, you end up with a trade policy that thinks a trade deficit is a personal insult. And this brings us to the real tragedy of the tariff saga. It's not just bad policy, it's a missed opportunity. Instead of chasing a fantasy of 1950s America, we could be investing in the industries of the future, clean energy, AI, healthcare, education. We could be training workers for jobs that actually exist, not promising them a time machine to a world that doesn't. But that requires leadership that's willing to look forward, not backward. And it requires a political movement that's open to debate, not one that demands blind loyalty. So let's raise a glass to Destiny and Shapiro for calling it like it is, and let's hope that somewhere, somehow, the Republican Party finds its way back to reality. Because if they don't, we're all going to be paying the price, literally and figuratively.